Attention, please.
3, 2, 1. We have ignition.
You already know who it is.
The following presentation is controversial and may be offensive to some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Radio from the heart of America now.
And now, the Commander-in-Chief is back. Heart of America with Carl Gallups. The Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio.
Welcome to another edition of Heart of America with Carl Gallups. My special guest today is Messianic Rabbi Zev Porat out of Israel, Tel Aviv, Israel. His ministry location is messiahofisraelministry.com or .org or .net. You just put in Messiah of Israel Ministries and then put in .com and you'll find his ministries and his website. And Zev Porat, are you with us from Israel today live?
Shalom, Carl. Thank you for having me.
Yes, no, it's our pleasure to have you. And I know at this particular point, this particular show is being broadcast in the morning in the United States, but I guess it's getting late evening now in Israel, right?
Well, for the first time, it's early evening.
Okay, early evening. Good. Okay, fantastic. Well, listen, there's been an earthquake of a story coming out of Israel, and I noticed that even today, as we are making this broadcast, that Jerusalem Post has something about it. I know that WND ran a big story on it several days ago, and you were featured in it. In fact, most of the interview commentary came from you. I had a small part in it, and Dr. Michael Brown had some things to say. But this amazing story about this Sanhedrin rabbinical movement in Israel to block, basically, or to deny or somehow delegitimize Messianic Jewish weddings. In other words, Jews who proclaim that Yeshua is Messiah, but they want to get married in the rabbinical court system of Israel so that they can have all of their rights and all of their benefits as Israeli Jewish citizens. But the Sanhedrin has figured out what's happening with this explosion of Jews that are coming to Christ in Israel, and you and I both think that's very prophetic. And so they're trying to kind of roadblock the whole thing with this prohibition of Jews who claim that Yeshua is Messiah and prohibiting them from getting married. If I said anything wrong, I want you to correct that. But what I'd like for you to do is to give our listeners, in case some that are listening have never heard any of this yet, maybe they've never read the Jerusalem Post article or the WND article, or they've never heard any other broadcast we've done, kind of give a brief summation of what's going on and why it's so complex. And then I've got some questions for you that I'm sure some of our listeners will have. I'll kind of play devil's advocate with you and ask you some what I call yeah, but questions. In other words, yeah, but what about Christians that want to get married there, not Jews, etc.? So I'll ask you all those later. But Zev, welcome to the program. And I'm going to hush speaking now. I want you to fill us in. You are from Israel. You live in Israel. You speak Hebrew as the first language. You've been listening to the reports in Israel. You've been listening to the radio programs. You've been reading the articles. You've been on the streets. You know what's going on. Plus, you have an analysis of it. So let me hush and you just tell our listeners what's going on as you see it.
Well, in August 29th, there was a decision made in the rabbinical courts in Tel Aviv that a Messianic couple born in Israel could not get married unless they deny Yeshua as the Lord. Well, first of all, this is something never been done in the state of Israel, because when you have an Israeli ID card, you just go to the rabbinical court and you sign to get married, and you get married, no questions asked, because you've got an Israeli citizenship. It says you're born in Israel. You're not an Arab, you're not a Muslim, and they don't ask any questions. Now they have beginning to ask questions, and it opened up from Yad Lashem. Yad Lashem is the anti-missionary organization Their head office is located in Bnei Brak in Jerusalem, Street 14. You can Google that. In fact, we did an outreach yesterday over there, and we're going to send out a report about that. Some amazing stuff happened over there with this article. And so basically, for years, Jews have been getting married because you go to the rabbinic court and they ask you, you're a Jew? And you say, I'm a Jew, that's it. And they'll ask you if you're a Christian. And you are a Jew because in Romans 11:23, it says that the Jews are grafted back into the olive tree. It doesn't say that they're grafted into the olive tree. It says the word back. And the reason is because when you are born a Jew, you will die a Jew. But a Jew that believes in Yeshua, in Jesus, is grafted back into the olive tree. I'll put it this way. When Paul was persecuting Christians, he was a Jew.
Yes.
When he had his Damascus Road experience and the Holy Spirit filled him up, he was still a Jew, but he became a completed Jew. He was grafted back into the olive tree.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
The fact that they've been getting married for years, as Jews, they are Jews. But they've never been questioned, are you a Jew that believes in Jesus until now, until the anti-missionary organization, Yad Lachim, has been targeting believers because there was a revival in Israel, and that's when this whole issue started to explode. Because that means that right now, they're going to be asking every single Jew that gets registered in the rabbinic courts, are you a believer in Jesus? They're not going to ask you if you're Jewish. Are you a believer in Jesus? And then they're going to say, in our category, you're not a Jew. Either you deny Jesus or you're not getting married.
Yeah. Yeah, that's astounding. So anyway, I know that once this thing broke and you were listening to talk radio conversations in Israel about it, and so you knew it was real, and you went to the street and you were talking to people on the street who knew about it, and they were confirming to you that this was real because it sounded surreal to you. You know, how could this be? How could this be? This is a direct attack upon Jews who are claiming that Yeshua is Messiah. It's a direct attack on these Messianic Jews who want to be married. And since the rabbinical court is trying to deny them that right, then they are losing privileges and citizenship rights and privileges and benefits because they are not being married according to the rabbinic / government tradition. So once you and I spoke to this, we did a Freedom Friday radio broadcast. We made some videos. You did some podcasts. WND picked up the story, did a big headliner story on it. You kind of started catching some flack from the Sanhedrin. They basically started backing up a little bit. Tell us that story and your reaction to it.
Well, first of all, Carl, when I exposed the story, I was referring to a couple that got denied in Haifa. And not just this story here. So there's another couple that got denied in Haifa that I know personally, and there's probably more out there that are being denied. And we need to understand something. The fact that the newspaper has reported this means it's huge, because the rabbis reject many cases. Do they report the cases on the news? No. Why do they report this case? Because it's huge, because it's a new step of persecution that we have not seen yet. People need to realize this. Every day, the rabbis are rejecting people for various reasons. Documentation, the mother's not Jewish. It's not on the news. No one knows about it. Why do they document this? Because it's something new. It's something huge. That needs to be brought out. It's very important to realize this.
Yeah. And so tell us, what is your argument to what are the rabbis, what's the Sanhedrin, what are they saying? What are they arguing? After that WND story came out, they were basically saying that you and I and WND, we had it all wrong, but we don't have it all wrong. What's the argument that they're making, and what's your response?
Well, first of all, the first 24 hours or 48 hours when this story hit the streets of Israel, the Sanhedrin, the rabbis were boasting all over the news. They were boasting all over the radio. You can hear it everywhere in Israel. Then the article of WND came out, and they started to switch their story around. Oh, this is not a corporal attack. We didn't say it's against all Messianics. It's an individual case. And we say, well, we pray it is an individual case. But it's not an individual case because he said that Messianic Jews, it means Jews that confess Jesus as the Messiah, as God, as Lord, cannot get married in Israel because they're no longer Jews, they're Christians. that is not an individual case. That is a corporal attack. And what I said, I issued a video and a statement out to the Sanhedrin in Israel, and I wrote an email also to the Sanhedrin today in Hebrew. I have that email with me, and I told them that if you are not targeting corporal, then show us that you can marry one Messianic couple, that you'll come out and you'll say, these are Jews that believe in Jesus, and we have married them. You see, it's not a corporal attack. They won't do it because it is a corporal attack.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's no argument here. It doesn't matter what people say. If we're looking at the evidence here, the evidence shows that they don't want to marry Messianic Jews. The evidence shows that they've never asked, do you believe in Jesus? And now they are. The evidence shows that it's a corporal attack because they want you to deny Yeshua. And I'm saying if it's not true, if somebody thinks it's not true, then the Sanhedrin need to prove through a document or through a video or through a radio broadcast that they're able to marry one Messianic couple, just one. Then it's not corporal.
Right.
But they won't do it. That's the point here. So there's really not an argument here, Carl.
Right. No, I agree. I'm I'm learning more and more about this movement, this story, as you have been educating me and others in Israel, and now reading the report in the Jerusalem Post. I see the reality of this, but I don't want to sound too disparaging here, but of course I wrote the book, The Rabbi Who Found Messiah, the story of Yitzhak Kaduri, and I too came under the same kind of hypocritical and deceitful attacks. I had people calling me a liar, the story a lie, it's not true, even though there was all kinds of written evidence and all kinds of evidence from Kaduri's ministry itself. But this seems to be a pattern. They will make a decree, they will say something, they will make a law, they'll make a ruling, and then they start boasting and bragging about it publicly. And then once the world finds out about it and people start talking about it and exposing it, they just back up and deny it. And they say, no, we didn't say that, or we didn't mean that, or you've got it wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. This just seems to be a pattern. Brother Zev, am I right? Am I seeing something? Am I just paranoid? How do you feel about that?
Absolutely. It happened with the Rabbi Who Found Messiah. It happened with the WEBY article. But I'm seeing something here in the spiritual realm that's much more prophetic.
Yes.
See, first of all, if they say that it's a corporal attack, that it's a corporal decision, okay, they're not going to use the word attack, a corporal decision, what's going to happen? Nobody's going to try to register to get married, right?
Right.
But if they say, look, it's an individual case, meaning we're going to weigh each case, so that means that they're saying that there is an option for a Messianic Jew to get married. And that's what they want. They want the Messianics to come to the rabbinic court in order for them to find out, number one, who they are, number two, to let them try to deny Jesus.
Yes.
That's another reason why they're saying it's not corporal, because if they say corporal, it's a done deal. You're not going to see the Messianics anymore. They're not going to try. If you say it's individual, you leave the open door for the Jews to come into the rabbinic court, and then you can attack them, deny Yeshua, deny Jesus.
Yes.
So I'm seeing the spiritual attack here.
Oh, yes. It's very deceitful, very tricky, and the same thing that Jesus was up against in the first century, and the early Christians were up against this same kind of persecution from the rabbis, the synagogues, the Sanhedrin, the Orthodox Jews, the very same thing. And you're right, this is prophetic, because now, what do we have? We have a returned Israel, a 2,600-year-old prophecy. We're the first generation to see it. We're in the 70th year of a returned Israel. And now, in this 70th year, breaks out this persecution, and that's what it is, against Jews who want to receive Yeshua as Messiah and Lord and Savior. And then they're told, well, we're going to deny you citizenship, benefits, and rights, but you have to deny Jesus, or either you have to come to us and lie and say that you are not Messianic, but if we ever find out you lied to us, then we'll start issuing criminal procedures against you. So, it's just, you're right. It's a deceptive, hypocritical, prophetic, biblical attack in the last days in a returned Israel against Jews who are coming to Christ, which, by the way, Jesus said would happen in the last days. He said, you'll be delivered over to the authorities. Your own families will turn you in. Family will turn against family. Sisters and brothers will turn against you. Mothers and fathers will turn against you. I mean, I can see some real trouble coming with this if somehow the government in Israel doesn't get a grip on this.
Absolutely, but one thing I want to bring out here is it's not denying citizenship. If you're a citizen of Israel,
Yes.
the rabbi can't take your citizenship away. You're still a citizen, but they won't let you get married, and that means that you'll be a citizen, but you won't have the rights of a citizen.
Yes.
It's kind of a legal law that's illegal. I don't know how if that's possible.
Yes. No, listen, I thank you for that clarification, and that's what I've been telling people. It's not a taking away of your citizenship, but it is denying you benefits and rights and privileges that come with Israeli citizenship as a Jew if you can't get married in the rabbinical courts, correct?
Absolutely. Now, you can go to a civil court outside of Israel, meaning you can go to Prague or go to Paraguay or go to Cyprus and get married over there, and then come back to Israel, go to the court of law in Israel, the regular court, try to get it validated. Then after you get it validated, if you do, you'll have to go to the Ministry of Interior, and I'm telling you, the rabbis are sitting there behind the scenes in the Ministry of Interior, and they're going to do something now that they haven't done. They're going to ask you in the Ministry of Interior, why did you get married in the civil court? What's your religion? Are you Jewish? What do you believe in? That's the next target.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and you just answered a question that I was going to ask, and that's good. I'm so glad you went there, because people would say, well, we'll just get married in a civil court somewhere, and then we'll come back. But you just explained what happened. So just for the sake of the audience, so who is now my wife, let's say in our younger years before we were married, but we came from the United States, we were Christians, and we went to Israel, and we wanted to live there. And I don't know what the laws are about getting citizenship, but let's just say we wanted to live there, and we decided to get married there. Well, we would just get married in a civil marriage in Israel, and that what the Sanhedrin's doing, what the rabbi's doing, that wouldn't affect us at all. But we're not entitled to the privileges of Israeli Jewish citizenship anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But what this is talking about, these are Israeli Jews who are living in Israel. Many of them may be born in Israel, who are now believers in Yeshua as Christ, as Lord, as Messiah. And then they want to, they're still Jews, so they want all the privileges and rights and benefits of being an Israeli Jew and their citizenship. So they go to the rabbinic courts, as every other Jew would do, and they apply for marriage, and they're denied it because they are a Jew who believes that Jesus is Messiah, right? Is that right?
That's right, and again, the listeners and the viewers around the world need to understand this has never happened in Israel before. It's never been the rabbinic court's authority or even business to ask you what you believe. If you came with an Israeli ID card, you can get married. This is a new step of persecution, a new level. I'll give you an example. There are certain mortgages in the banks in Israel that Israelis can get. Not Israeli Arabs. I'm talking about Israeli Jews have certain mortgages they can get. When you go into a bank to get a mortgage, they ask you, what job are you working, and can we see your identification card? If your identification card, it is an Israeli ID card, and it says that you're married, and it says that you're a Jew, they're not going to ask you if you believe in Jesus, because you are a Jew, and they're going to give you a mortgage. That's the same thing that was in the rabbinic courts. Now, imagine right now, the mortgages are going to start asking people, okay, you're a Jew, do you believe in Jesus? We're not going to give you a mortgage. That would be the same thing.
Yeah. Man, that's astounding. So I know some of the listeners are saying, well, gosh, what can be done? What's going to be done? Well, we don't know what's going to be done, but what can be done is what we're doing, and that is exposing this for what it is. exposing the facts, because obviously the Sanhedrin, obviously the Orthodox Jewish leaders in Israel don't want this information to get out, because I think they have designs on all of those things that you are speculating upon. And again, a lot of what you're saying is not speculation, it's already happening, but you live there. You have deep, deep family heritage there. You come from the Jewish faith. You speak Hebrew. Your father was a rabbi. Your grandfather was a rabbi. Your great-grandfather was a rabbi. And you have proclaimed Yeshua as Messiah, Lord, and Savior. You are sharing the gospel around Israel, and you are coming under persecution from your own family, from the community you grew up in. So you understand this thing inside and out, and you're saying that you smell a rat. If this thing continues to be allowed, that it's going to get into the Ministry of the Interior, it's going to get into the mortgages and the banks, and before long, it's going to be a test for everything. All right? You're an Israeli, you're a Jew, but do you believe in Yeshua? If you do, you must renounce that, or you can't get this loan. You can't get this government benefit. You can't get this mortgage. You can't get, I mean, this is prophetic, brother. This is straight out of the Bible.
Absolutely, and I want to bring something out over here. You mentioned if you came to Israel as a Christian. Well, I need to ask you the question. When you say I came to Israel as a Christian, do you mean you came to Israel as a Messianic Jew? Or you told them, I am a Christian, not a non-Jew coming to Israel. That's different.
Yes, no, I know. I meant a non-Jew coming as a Christian, and that is different, and that's the point I was trying to make, yes.
Okay, if you fill out documentation in the United States or wherever you're coming from saying, I'm not a Jew, I'm coming to Israel, and they have categories why you want to come. Maybe you're opening a business, maybe you want to bring in money to the country, maybe you're a professor. I don't know what the categories are, but there are certain categories that a person can come to Israel and live. That's, that really is individual. The rabbis will not care about your case.
Yes.
As long as you're coming in as a non-Jew, the rabbis will not touch you. If the Ministry of Interior wants to give you an ID card, wants to get you validate your marriage in Israel from a civil court, the rabbis don't care.
Yes.
When do the rabbis get involved? When you state that you're a Jew. Then they want to know, okay, do you believe in Jesus? And then they attack you.
Yes.
If you're not a Jew, they don't care that you believe in Jesus.
Yes.
They don't care that you believe in. They don't care that they don't care about that. They're targeting only Jews. I want to make that clear.
Yes. Yes. No, you have made that clear, and much clearer than I have made it. I've tried to make it clear, but you've made it very clear. So let me ask you another question here. So let's say a Jewish couple living in, let's just say Miami, Florida, okay? A Jewish couple living in Miami, Florida, they become believers in Yeshua. And so now they are Messianic Jews, but they are Jews by heritage, by racial distinction, by family, heritage, etc. All right, so they're Jewish, but they are Messianic Jews now because recently they've come to know Yeshua as Messiah and Lord. Now, they say, you know what? We want to make aliyah to Israel. We want to return to the land. We want to establish ourselves. We want to live there. So they go to Israel to apply for citizenship as Messianic Jews. What happens now under this new ruling?
Well, first of all, let's go back 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years. Many Messianic Jews who have documentation that they're Jews, who legally can make aliyah to Israel, were always asked when they arrived to Israel on their application, are you a believer in Jesus? That has always been the case when they wanted to make aliyah. Now, I'm not here to judge anybody, and, that's the Lord's job. I don't know, but I do know that if you write on your application that you are a believer in Jesus and you want to make aliyah, there is no way they're going to let you in. Now, have there been cases where people hired attorneys and they fought in court and they won and they made aliyah? I'm sure there are. But in general, if you write on your application that you believe in Jesus and you want to make aliyah, there's no way they're going to approve it without a fight in court. So to answer your question, even before this ruling it was a problem. Now it's going to be a bigger problem. And I'm sure that a lot of people were dishonest on their form and wrote that they're Jewish without confessing Jesus. There's no other way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. I know a lot of people have that question. So, well, Zev, listen, I think we've pretty well covered this. I'm going to give you the final word in case there's more that you want to say or something I didn't ask you. But so the bottom line is, even though the Sanhedrin and Orthodox Jewish leaders in Israel are trying to say that you and I are incorrect in this, and there are people all over blogs and Facebook and YouTube saying that we don't know what we're talking about. I mean, it's pretty obvious that you do know what you're talking about, and that you have stated all of this correctly. Again, just today, September the 4th or 5th of 2017, the Jerusalem Post basically ran an article in the headlines, testifying to what we've been saying. In fact, let me just read this headline. It says, "New campaign reopens debate on civil marriage in Israel." That's civil marriage. But underneath it, the subtitle is, "Rabbinical Court Rules Against Jewish Marriage Rights for Messianic Jews." I mean, that is in the Jerusalem Post. And they're not, and even the Jerusalem Post is not saying it's just for certain cases. Their subtitle says, "Rabbinical Court Rules Against Jewish Marriage Rights for Messianic Jews." I mean, that's across the board. So the Jerusalem Post confirms what you've been telling the world for the past several weeks, that what you've been saying is absolutely true.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and why are they reporting it on the 4th of the month when it happened on the 29th? Well, because it's shaking the nation of Israel. The streets of Israel are speaking about it.
Yes.
We did an outreach, and we were attacked by it in the middle of the street, but God turned it around. I'll be sending out a report this week about that. And it's all over Israel. So the Jerusalem Post is reporting it. Now, who reads the Jerusalem Post? Most of the people that read the Jerusalem Post are Aliyah, people that made Aliyah that speak English. That's the most of the people that read the Jerusalem Post. So they're actually putting it out there in a indirect way as persecution also, because the Jerusalem Post are not believers; they're against the believers. Why are they putting it out there? Because they're boasting in an indirect way. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It makes sense to me, and I believe it will to our listeners as well. Well, Zev, listen. So let me give you the last word. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to cover? Is there anything you want to say as we close this particular program of Heart of America?
I've been receiving a lot of emails from people asking me questions like, what about Muslims if they want to get married? What about Arabs if they want to get married? And the answer is the same thing. There are many Arabs that live in Israel that have Israeli citizenship. They're not required to get married in the rabbinic court. The rabbis will not marry them because they're not Jewish, and therefore also the rabbis do not involve in their procedure. They don't care. So I want to make that clear. The rabbis are not interested in anybody else except for Jewish. If you're not Jewish, you're supposed to believe in Jesus. If you're not Jewish, you're supposed to believe in Muhammad. Judaism is not an evangelistic ministry. It's not trying to recruit people to become Jewish. In fact, when somebody, a woman that's a Gentile, the rabbis tell you, look, we're not too happy about converting her, but we'll do it because you're a Jew. So they're not trying to bring anybody to their side. They're saying if you're a believer in Jesus, that's fine with us. But if you're Jewish, we don't want you here.
Right. Okay. I got it. Well, listen, you're starting to break up pretty badly now. The connection between here and Israel across the Atlantic Ocean is not very good right now. So we'll go ahead and conclude this particular broadcast, Zev. But I'm telling you, man, this is powerful. This is earthquake. This is earth-shattering stuff. And I think it's very biblical. I think it's very prophetic. And I think that what you're doing, what I'm trying to do, what WND has done, and others, by reporting it, speaking out, explaining it, unveiling it, unmasking it, I think that's the best thing we can do. Of course, prayer, cover this in prayer for the Jewish believers in Israel that are now being persecuted and targeted because of this. And we'll see what God does with all of this. But I mean, people have been asking me today. I've done other interviews today on this, and they said, what do we do? What do we do? And I said, well, you cover it in prayer, but you understand that this is prophetic. But you speak out and you explain it and you make the world aware of it, because that's how these things happen. If they're allowed to continue in secrecy, they will only get worse. Do you agree, Zev? Have I left anything out?
Absolutely, and the rumors are right now, a little bit more than rumors on the Jerusalem Post, that they're trying to, possibly make trouble in the civil court as well. I don't think that's going to happen, but the fact that they're saying it, whether it does happen or not, it'll happen behind the scenes, and that's trouble.
Yes. Okay. All right, so we need to pray for Israel. We need to pray for the Jews in Israel, and particularly we need to pray for the Messianic Jews who are citizens of Israel, who are professing Yeshua as Messiah and Lord, but they are now being persecuted or targeted by the rabbinic courts, and for the first time in Israel's history as a returned nation. So, Zev, thank you, brother. We pray for you. Your ministry in the streets of leading Jews to Christ is going to be even more difficult for a while. We pray for you, for your safety, for God's anointing over you, your wife, your family, your ministry team, partners, and leaders, and we'll get you back on. If anything changes, let's get you back on for another broadcast to explain this.
Well, thank you, Carl. And if anything, it encourages us to go out and share the gospel more because, look, it's an attack from the enemy. The enemy knows his days are numbered, and he's losing it. And this is the time for the gospel to hit the streets, for the book, The Rabble Who Found Messiah, to explode in Israel. Because right now, the Jews have ears to hear, and I think it's going to turn out for good. Maybe difficult times, but I think it's also a warning for us as believers. This is small. This is just small persecution. If we can't pass this, how are we going to pass the big persecution?
Yes. No, that's good. Those are good words. That's great. Zev, God bless you, man. You go on and get some rest. I know your evening is winding down now in Israel, even though it's morning here in the States as we are making this broadcast. But I love you, my brother. Thank you for your ministry partnership. Thank you for all you're doing for the kingdom's sake. Thank you for taking time out of your day to explain this very complex topic. I think our listeners will be very pleased by the explanation that you've given and the understanding that you have given to them. So shalom, my brother, and if anything changes, please call me and let's do this again, okay?
Shalom, and God bless you.
All right. Thank you, Zev. Well, folks, that'll wrap up this edition of Heart of America with Carl Gallups. My special guest today, Zev Porat. Again, check out his website, messiahofisraelministries.com. messiahofisraelministries.com. Zev Porat. That's Z-E-V-P-O-R-A-T. You can find, in case you are listening and you're saying, well, I don't know if I'll remember that. Don't worry. Just go to my website. You can remember my name, carlgallups.com. Right down in the middle of the page, about 3/4 of the way down, you'll see a big banner about Zev Porat and his ministries. You click on that banner, it'll take you straight to his websites. So, until we meet again, God bless you. Thank you for listening to Heart of America with Carl Gallups. We'll see you next time.